At the airport with his bride, the Mafia boss stopped dead. His black ex-assistant stood there with his identical triplets Chapter 1. Three faces he already knew: INCHEON International Airport, DEPARTURES Terminal 2. 14 p.m. The wedding was in 3 days. Choi Sun-woo, 38, moved through Incheon International with the particular authority of a man who had never once in his adult life waited for anything. 6'2", charcoal suit, the kind of face that photographers called architectural and subordinates called unreadable. He had 17 missed calls on his secondary phone, and a property acquisition closing in 40 minutes that his legal team was handling remotely. He was thinking about neither. Beside him, Park Jisoo, 30, his fiancée of 8 months, walked with the studied elegance of a woman who had been raised to understand that airports, like boardrooms, were stages. Her cream coat was spotless. Her ring, 3 carats, internally flawless, caught the terminal light at intervals that were not entirely accidental. Behind them, a 4-person security detail moved in practiced formation. The Choi Park merger, as the business press had taken to calling the engagement, would formalize the consolidation of 2 of Seoul's most significant criminal-adjacent financial empires into a single entity with enough legitimate corporate cover to be essentially untouchable. Sun-woo's father had spent 30 years building toward exactly this. Sun-woo had spent the last 2 being shaped into the vessel for it. He was, by every visible measure, on course. He was 12 meters from the international departure gate when he stopped. The stop was not gradual. It was absolute, a man whose entire forward momentum was canceled by a single point of visual input, the way a ship hits a reef. Jisoo walked 2 steps further before she registered his absence and turned. Sun-woo. He was looking across the terminal. Adaeze Campbell, 31, stood near the check-in queue for the Jeju domestic terminal. She was wearing a dark green coat over a cream blouse, her hair natural and pulled back, and she had the look of a woman managing several things simultaneously with the quiet competence that had once made her the most effective personal assistant in the Choi organization. She was also managing a triple stroller. In the triple stroller, dressed in coordinating dark blue, because of course they were, because the universe apparently had a sense of proportion, were 3 infant boys, approximately 14 months old. Round-faced, alert, with the particular jaw architecture of the Choi family rendered in miniature across 3 identical faces. Sun-woo looked at the bobbies. The bobbies looked back at him with the unguarded directness of children who had not yet learned to pretend. The terminal continued around them, announcements, rolling luggage, the ambient percussion of 1,000 journeys. None of it reached Sun-woo. He was standing in a bubble of absolute stillness. Adaeze had not seen him yet. She was adjusting a blanket on the leftmost baby, her back at a slight angle. Her phone was tucked between her ear and her shoulder mid-conversation. Jisoo followed his eyeline. She looked at the woman, the stroller, the 3 identical faces, then she looked at Sun-woo. His expression had done something she had never seen it do in 8 months of engagement. It had opened, just slightly, a hairline fracture in the architectural control, but enough that she could see what was underneath it, and what was underneath it was not something she could file neatly away. "Who is that?" she said. Sun-woo didn't answer because at that moment Adaeze turned, phone still at her ear, and their eyes met across 14 months and 12 meters of terminal floor. She went very still. Leftmost baby, the one she had just straightened the blanket on, looked from his mother to the tall man across the terminal and back again, with the patient curiosity of someone taking notes. Sun-woo took 1 step forward. Adaeze ended her call. INCHEON airport terminal seating area. Continuous, they stood 6 feet apart while the terminal moved around them, and Jisoo stood 4 feet behind Sun-woo with an expression that had sharpened into something cold and assessing. "Adaeze," he said. "Woo." Her voice was the same, measured, precise, with the particular quality of someone who chose words carefully because she understood their weight. He looked at the stroller. He could not stop looking at it. The 3 boys looked back at him with varying degrees of interest. The leftmost was solemn. The center was already reaching for the stroller frame with exploratory intent. The rightmost had fallen asleep with the serene indifference of a person who had decided this situation did not require his participation. 14 months, he said. Not a question. He could do arithmetic. 14 months and 3 weeks, she said. The arithmetic put a specific night in Dubai at its origin point, a conference, a crisis he had pulled her into at 2 a.m. to manage a contract negotiation that had gone sideways, and what had happened in the hours after. The last time they had been in the same room before she resigned her position with a clean letter and no forwarding address. You left, he said. You were engaged, she said. Informally. The announcement wasn't public yet, but I knew. Her jaw was set. I wasn't going to, she paused, chose precisely, complicate your trajectory. 3 children is a complication, Jisoo said from behind him. Her voice was silk over steel. Adaeze looked at her with the specific calm of a woman who had prepared in some version of her mind for this exact moment. Yes, she said simply. I imagine it is. Sun-woo turned to Jisoo. Give me a moment. Sun-woo, a moment, she stepped back. Her eyes were calculating now, not hurt, not surprised, calculating. He filed that and turned back to Adaeze. Their names, he said. She looked at him for a moment. Kojo, she said, and touched the leftmost baby's hand. KWAM. The center one who had successfully gripped the stroller frame and was now attempting to pull himself upright. And KOFI, the sleeping one who offered no acknowledgement. They're named for my grandfather's brothers. 3 men, he said, were steady when everything else wasn't. Sun-woo crouched down in front of the stroller. 3 suits, charcoal, him at their age in photographs he had seen once in his grandmother's house. 3 faces with Adaeze's eyes and his jaw and a quality of presence that was entirely their own. Kojo stared at him with absolute seriousness. Sun-woo stared back. Something happened in his chest that his entire adult life had not equipped him to identify or contain. Where are you going? He said without looking up. Jeju, Adaeze said. My friend has a house. I needed distance. He looked up at her. From what? Her expression shifted slightly. A door almost opening and then reconsidering. Someone left an envelope at my apartment 3 days ago, she said. No return address, photographs, my building, the boys in the park. A pause. A note that said the Choi air requires a clean start. Asterisk, the temperature in Sun-woo's immediate space dropped several degrees. He stood slowly. Who else knows about them? He said. I don't know. I thought no one. She held his gaze. I was apparently wrong. Chapter 2. The Throne and its cost CHOI Organization Headquarters Chairman's Office. That EVNINGCHOI BYUNGSWO, 68 Chairman, Sun-woo's father, had a face that had been sculpted by 40 years of decisions made without sentiment. He sat behind a desk that was cleared of everything except a single manila folder which he had been waiting to deploy. He deployed it now, sliding it across to Sun-woo with the controlled precision of a man who had planned this conversation. Inside, photographs, Adaeze's building, the park, the triple stroller, the boys, 14 months of surveillance. Sun-woo looked at them without touching them. You knew, he said. 11 months, his father said. My people found it when they ran the standard post-Dubai debrief. You said nothing. I was managing it. Sun-woo looked up from the photographs. Managing it, asterisk, his father's expression did not change. The park merger is worth more than you are capable of currently calculating. The Kang alliance that supports it is built on specific foundations of continuity and legitimacy. 3 illegitimate heirs to a black former assistant, he paused, as if this were merely a logistical variable, is not a manageable variable within that structure. They're my sons. They are a liability. The word sat in the air between them. Sun-woo looked at his father, the man he had shaped himself against, for around the gravitational force that had organized his entire adult life, with an expression that was, for the first time, entirely outside his father's control. What does managing it mean, specifically? Very quietly, his father did not answer immediately. The note was yours, Sun-woo said, not a question. I gave them the opportunity to relocate quietly with appropriate resources. She didn't take it. A pause. Director Kang was made aware of the situation last week as required by our disclosure agreements around the merger. His father folded his hands. He has expressed strong opinions about resolution. Kang Songl. Sun-woo said the name with no inflection. Is a practical man. Runs a private enforcement division that has made 4 people disappear in 18 months. Sun-woo stood. Don't tell me what kind of man he is, Sun-woo. His father's voice carried its full authority. You will attend the wedding rehearsal Friday, you will marry Jisoo on Saturday, and you will allow me to handle the— No, the word fell like a door closing. Byung-soo looked at his son. If you leave this building to go to her, he said carefully, you leave everything. The succession, the organization, the merger, everything I built for you. Sun-woo picked up his jacket. Then I leave everything, he said. Chapter 3. Jeju Island in the rain. Jeju Island coastal villa. Night-Ha arrived at 11 p.m. in a rental car, alone, having left his security detail in Seoul with instructions that he knew would be ignored within the hour. He had sent one message ahead, a single text to a number he had memorized a year ago and never deleted. I know about the note. I know about Kang. Don't open the door for anyone until you hear from me. Asterisk. The villa was a stone structure on a coastal ridge, obscured from the main road by wind-bent trees. Lights on inside. He could see movement through the window. She opened the door before he knocked. They looked at each other through the screen door in the rain. You came alone, she said. Yes. That was tactically poor. Probably. He waited. Can I come in? Villa. Continuous. The villa's main room was the controlled chaos of a woman managing 3 mobile toddlers in a finite space with grace and visible exhaustion. Kojo was asleep on the sofa, buckled into a portable seat. Kwame was crawling the perimeter of a blanket laid on the floor with the methodical focus of a small person with a large project. Kofi was awake in a travel crib, holding his own foot, apparently satisfied. Sun-woo stood in the doorway of the main room and looked at his sons in their natural habitat. Kojo, Kwame, Kofi, something in him that had been in motion for 20 years went entirely still. Adaeze was watching him from the kitchen doorway. She had a mug of tea and an expression that had several layers she was not yet prepared to disassemble. Kang's people will know where I am by morning, he said, pulling himself back to operational mode. I have a contact on Jeju, retired, trustworthy, who can give us a secondary location by dawn if we need it. But for tonight, this is Sun-woo, she said it quietly. I know, he looked at her. I know what Kang does, she said. I know about the 4 people, I know about the enforcement division. She paused. I'm not completely unprepared. I know, he said, and he meant something larger than the security perimeter. She looked at him for a moment. Then, there's tea. He sat at the kitchen table while she poured, and Kwame continued his blanket circumnavigation in the next room. The rain came in off the coast. Why didn't you tell me? He said. When? She sat across from him. Before Dubai, you were already scheduled to the merger. After Dubai, you announced the engagement. She wrapped her hands around her mug. There was no version of that conversation that didn't look like I was trying to interfere with something you had chosen. I didn't choose it, he said. I was placed in it. You didn't resist it. Truth of that sat between them without defense. No, he said. I didn't. Kwame had reached the edge of the blanket and was examining Sun-woo's shoe with deep suspicion. Sun-woo looked down at him. Kwame looked up. The assessment appeared to conclude in Sun-woo's favor because Kwame grabbed his trouser leg and attempted to stand. Sun-woo very carefully reached down and provided a steadying finger. Kwame stood, looked enormously pleased. Let go and sat back down with the immediate calm of someone who had proven a point. Adaeze watched this. Something moved in her expression that she did not try to hide. He's been trying to do that for a week, she said quietly. He's stubborn, Sun-woo said. He gets that from somewhere. Woo almost smiled. Outside, the rain hit the coast with the steady insistence of something that had been at it for a long time and intended to continue. Chapter 4. What SHE actually was. Jeju Villa back room. 2:47 a.m. He found her because the villa was small and he was not sleeping. The back room was the smallest bedroom, repurposed as a workspace. The door was half open. He stopped in the corridor when he saw the light. Adaeze was at the table with a laptop open and a field-stripped Glock 19 in component parts in front of her. Her hands moving through the reassembly with the particular muscle memory fluency of someone who had done it 10,000 times. On the laptop screen, encrypted files, a network diagram, and what appeared to be a financial architecture map with the Kang family name at its apex. He stood in the doorway. She finished the reassembly without looking up, racked the slide once to confirm the action, set the weapon down. Then she looked at him. Close the door, she said. He came in and closed it. 11 years ago, she said, I was recruited into an intelligence program operated jointly by Korean Domestic Security and a U.S.-partnered intelligence framework. I ran embedded cover operations for 6 years. Corporate environments, specifically the kind of organizations that operated on the boundary between legitimate business and organized finance. Room was very quiet. I resigned from active operations 4 years ago. Legitimately, I wanted something different. She looked at her hands. I took the assistant position with the Choi organization because the intelligence framework had flagged Kang Seong-il as a subject of active interest, and your father's organization was the most proximate access point. A pause. I was supposed to gather documentation and exit. 6 months maximum. Sun-woo was looking at her. I was there for 2 years, she said. That was not the plan. Dubai was not the plan, he said. No, she held his gaze. Dubai was entirely outside the plan. Documentation. She turned the laptop toward him. The financial architecture was thorough, sourced, and damning. 4 years of Kang Seong-il's illegal infrastructure laid out with the precision of someone who had been building a case brick by careful brick. Shell companies, enforcement contracts, payments to officials in 3 ministries. And Sun-woo leaned forward, specific evidence connecting the Kang family to the 4 disappearances he had known about and 3 more he hadn't. This is enough, he said. A full prosecution, yes. She turned the laptop back. I was going to deliver it after the boys were safe. The Jeju trip was cover, my contact in the joint framework is here. I was going to hand off the files and disappear with the boys somewhere that Kang couldn't reach. Without telling me, she looked at him directly. You were 3 days from marrying his daughter. Jisoo is his. Jisoo is his operational asset. She reports everything. She paused. The envelope left at my apartment was meant to frighten me into moving before I could complete the handoff. They wanted me in transit, exposed. Her jaw tightened. What they didn't know is that I moved my handoff timeline the same day the envelope arrived. Sun-woo sat back slowly. The woman across from him had spent 2 years inside his organization collecting evidence against his future father-in-law, had carried his children without telling him, and had simultaneously been running an intelligence operation that was, if the documentation on that screen was accurate, about to dismantle an organization that his father's entire legacy was yoked to. You were never a victim in this, he said. No, she said. I never was. She met his eyes. I'm sorry I wasn't honest sooner. I am not sorry for any of it except the boys not knowing you. A pause. That part I'm sorry for. He looked at her for a long time. What do you need from me? He said. She blinked. That was apparently not the response she had planned for. Need 48 hours, she said. And someone to watch the boys while I make the handoff, he said. What else? Chapter 5. The KANG response JEJU safe location, second villa. The following morning they moved before dawn to the contact's property. A retired intelligence liaison named OH-SANGMIN, who had a farmhouse 3 kilometers inland, and a facial expression that suggested he had been surprised exactly once in his life, and had resolved to prevent a recurrence. He looked at Sun-woo with the assessment of a man who had read a file. He looked at the triple stroller with the assessment of a man who had not expected it to be in the file. 3, he said to Adaeze. 3, she confirmed. He nodded once, with the contained approval of someone acknowledging a logistical achievement, and held the door. The farmhouse had secure communications, reinforced doors, and a room that Kwame immediately began to circumnavigate. Kofi found a patch of morning sunlight on the kitchen floor and sat in it with the focused satisfaction of a cat. Kojo watched everything and said nothing. The most Choi of the 3, Sun-woo was beginning to understand. Sun-woo was changing Kwame, a process he had been learning for 12 hours with the steep curve focus he applied to all new operational challenges. When his secondary phone rang, JISOO he answered it. I know where you are, she said, no preamble. And I know what she has, a pause. My father wants to make an arrangement. There is no arrangement. Sun-woo. Her voice was careful. You don't understand how exposed your father is in this. If those files surface, your father made 4 people disappear. His voice was level. 3 of them were traced back to financial operations that your family ran through my father's network. Your father used our organization as a liability buffer. He paused. So no, there's no arrangement. Silence. The wedding is Saturday, she said. There's no wedding. Silence, different quality. Choosing them, she said, not accusatory. Almost curious, in the way of someone for whom emotional logic was a foreign language. Yes, he said. He ended the call. Kwame grabbed his finger and attempted to stand. Sun-woo provided the steadying finger automatically. Now farmhouse, war room, afternoon Adaeze at the table with Oh Sangmin and a secure phone. The file transfer in progress to the joint frameworks receiving analyst in Seoul. Sun-woo had taken the boys to the room at the end of the hall, not because he couldn't listen, but because Kojo had begun to show signs of prenup irritability, and someone needed to manage it. He sat on the floor with 3 toddlers arranged around him in various stages of afternoon willingness, and thought about how 12 hours ago he had been in a charcoal suit in an airport on a trajectory that had felt, from the inside, as inevitable as gravity. Kofi climbed into his lap without preamble, located a comfortable position, and closed his eyes. Sun-woo sat very still so as not to disturb him. From the other room, he could hear the low professional cadence of Adaeze managing the most important file transfer of a 4-year intelligence operation. From his lap, Kofi was snoring. Kojo, from across the room, watched his father hold his brother with the serious attention of someone filing information for later. Sun-woo met his son's eyes. I know, he said quietly. I have a lot to catch up on. Kojo appeared to consider this. Then he crawled forward and leaned against Sun-woo's arm with the provisional trust of someone who was withholding final judgment, but was willing to gather more data. Chapter 6. The collapse of the KANG, STRUCTURFRMHOUSC. Evening/various locations. Simultaneous, the files reached the joint framework receiving analyst at 4:17 p.m. by 6:30 p.m. The Ministry of Justice had issued an emergency judicial review order. By 8:00 p.m., KANG SEONGL's primary financial accounts had been frozen pursuant to the review. By 9:15 p.m., 2 of his senior organizational figures had been detained for questioning in Seoul. Oh Sangmin watched the notification cascade on his secure tablet with the satisfaction of a man who had waited 4 years for a particular sequence of dominoes to fall. Adaeze sat at the table with her tea and the specific stillness of someone who had carried something very heavy for a very long time and had just set it down. Sun-woo came in from the back room where the boys were sleeping. He had learned in the last 18 hours that getting 3 14-month-olds to sleep simultaneously required the strategic focus of a hostile takeover and was significantly more difficult. He sat across from her. It's done, she said. Yes, she looked at her hands. Your father's organization, the framework, will require cooperation and restructuring. He won't be prosecuted if he cooperates with the disclosure process. But Iron Gate, she paused, the legitimate holdings survive. The rest doesn't. I know. He had spoken to his father at 7 p.m., a conversation that had been brief, geometric, and final. His father had said in the end only, your mother would have done the same thing. It was the closest Byung-soo had come to a blessing in 30 years. Jisoo, Adaeze said. Her legal team is managing her position. She cooperated with the financial review in exchange for a reduced exposure agreement. He paused. She called the wedding off officially at 8 p.m. The announcement will be handled as a mutual decision. Adaeze was quiet. What happens to you now? He said. She looked at him. Program deactivation. Full. My file goes dormant. I get a clean identity documentation package and whatever relocation support I need. She paused. Been given latitude on destination. The boys, she held his gaze. That depends on several things. What I do, he said. Yes, he was quiet for a moment. Have a property in Busan, he said. My grandmother's original house. I kept it separate from everything. It's not in any of the organization's assets, never was. It's just a house. He looked at her. It's near the coast. It has a garden that's been unattended for 3 years. A pause. It has 4 bedrooms. She looked at him. I'm not asking for anything, he said carefully. I'm not making assumptions about what any of this means or what you want. I understand that I am significantly behind and that the deficit is not small. He held her gaze. I'm asking to be present for them. And if you're willing to rebuild something between us that was always real, even when everything around it wasn't. Farmhouse was quiet. Outside, the Jeju coast was doing what coasts do, patient, perpetual, indifferent to human schedules. Adaeze looked at him for a long time. The garden, she said finally. Who's been maintaining it? A neighbor, elderly woman. She grows vegetables in the east section because she says it would be a waste to leave the soil. That's pragmatic. She's pragmatic. Another pause. Kojo woke up twice last night, Adaeze said. He needs someone to sit with him for about 15 minutes and then he settles. Kwame sleeps through anything. Kofi will only sleep if you put one hand on his back. She paused. You should know those things. Sun-woo looked at her. I want to know them, he said. Chapter 7. Learning the language of Ordinarybusn, grandmother's house. 6 weeks later, the house was stone and old wood, set on a slope above the harbor, with a garden that the neighbor had indeed been maintaining, the east section producing green onions and perilla in disciplined rows, the rest a tended wilderness of things that grew because they wanted to. Sun-woo had been there for 4 weeks before Adaeze arrived with the boys and 3 suitcases, and the specific expression of someone who had decided something and was done deliberating about it. The first week was the adjustment. Kwame learned the stairs immediately and had to be deterred from them with baby gates that Sun-woo had installed with the focused attention he had once applied to hostile acquisitions. Kofi discovered the garden and its soil with a passion that the neighbor, Halmonikim, approved of with the particular warmth she reserved for useful children. Kojo watched the harbor from the upstairs window for long periods, content in observation. Sun-woo learned. The 15-minute night sitting for Kojo, the sleep-through capability of Kwame, the backhand settling of Kofi. He learned that all 3 of them made the same expression, a slight left tilt of the head, when encountering something new, and that this expression was Adaeze and not his. He learned to make perilla rice because Adaeze mentioned once that the boys liked it, and he was in the kitchen for an hour before she found him studying 3 different recipes with the grimly determined focus of a man who was not going to be defeated by seasoning. She stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at him. You have perilla on your shirt, she said. It's a process. Can see that. It's supposed to smell like this at this stage. She came to the counter, looked at the pan, adjusted the heat without asking, handed him a wooden spoon. Stir, gently, it's not a hostile situation. He stirred gently. They stood side by side in the kitchen in the late afternoon light that came off the harbor and into the stone house with the warmth of something that had been doing this for decades. Kang's secondary proceeding concluded today, she said. Oh Sangman sent confirmation. The 4 families got formal acknowledgement. A pause. It's not enough. But it's real, he said. Your father, he's cooperating. The legitimate holdings are restructuring under new management. He's stepping back. Sun-woo was quiet for a moment. He called yesterday, asked about the boys. A pause. I told him their names. Adaeze looked at him sideways. He said they were good names, Sun-woo said. Strong names. He said my grandmother had a brother named Kwame. He didn't know I knew that. She looked at him. I didn't know it either, he said, until he told me. Perilla rice was ready. From the garden, through the open window, came the sound of Halmonikim telling Kofi in patient Korean that the soil went in the garden, not in his mouth, and Kofi's response, which was not deterrence. Chapter 8. What stays Busan harbor? 3 months later, early morning. Sun-woo was on the harbor steps at 6 a.m. with Kojo, because Kojo had woken at 5:47 and Sun-woo had gotten there first, still a surprise to himself. How quickly he had learned to hear the specific quality of that particular waking, and had brought him down to the water rather than let the house noise wake his brothers. Ko sat on Sun-woo's knee and watched the harbor with the serious attention he brought to most things. The boats were going out. The city was waking in layers, harbor first, then the market streets above it, then the residential slopes where the stone house sat. That's a cargo vessel, Sun-woo said, pointing. 20,000 tons approximately. See the waterline, it's loaded. Kojo watched it with gravity. And that's a fishing boat, much smaller, works the inner bay. He paused. Your great-grandmother used to watch these boats from higher up on the slope, before any of this was mine. When all of this was just the world. Kojo leaned back against his chest. Sun-woo held him and looked at the harbor he had left when he was 17 to become something with enough weight to make the world stop ignoring him. He had achieved that. The weight had been everything he intended and cost everything he hadn't calculated. He heard the door above and turned. Adaeze came down the harbor steps with 2 cups of tea. She had learned which step had the loose stone and avoided it without looking and sat beside him. Kojo transferred to her lap with the portable loyalty of a small person who maintained multiple alliances. She handed Sun-woo his cup. They looked at the harbor. "Oh, Sangmin called," she said. "There's a 6-month language and culture education contract in Seoul. Policy research on organized crime financial structures. They want a consultant who understands it from the inside." She paused. "He thought you might be interested." Sun-woo looked at her. "Using my experience to dismantle what I built." Essentially, she held his gaze. "It would take you to Seoul 2 days a week. The rest you could do from here." He was quiet. "And you," he said. "Framework offered me a research and training advisory role, designing embedded operative protocols." A pause. "Desk work mostly, Seoul-based but flexible." She looked at the harbor. "It's not nothing, it's useful. Be here. When I'm not there." She glanced at him. "We'd be figuring out the geography." He looked at his tea. The harbor. His son in her lap, watching the cargo vessel with inherited seriousness. 3 months ago he had stood in an airport in a charcoal suit on a trajectory that had felt like fate and turned out to be a corridor he had never questioned because the door at the end of it was the one his father had built. He had walked out of the corridor. What he had walked into was smaller, a stone house, a harbor, a garden with someone else's green onions. 3 boys who were changing every week in ways that he was only now beginning to have the vocabulary to describe, and it was the largest thing he had ever been part of. "Kwame is going to find those steps in about a week," he said. "I know." She looked resigned. "Halmione Kim said she'll watch them on the days we're in Seoul. She charges in Perilla." "Does." A pause. "Sun-woo," he looked at her. "I'm not forgiving the 2 years at once," she said. "I want you to know that. I'm not closing the account yet. It's still open." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking to close it. I'm saying it because I need you to understand that what I'm doing staying is not because the account is settled. It's because—" She looked at Kojo, then at the harbor, then at him. "What's here is real, and real things are worth the slow work." He held her gaze. "Do the slow work," he said. She looked at him for a long moment with the same clear-eyed directness that had, in another life, made her the most effective person in any room she entered. Then she looked back at the harbor. From inside the house, faint but unmistakable, Kwame had located the baby gate on the stairs and was investigating it with focused intent. Kofi, on cue, began his morning commentary on the situation. Adaeze stood, transferring Kojo to Sun-woo's arms. "Your turn." He was already moving. She watched him go up the steps, avoiding the loose stone without being told, she noticed, because he had been watching how she navigated it and had adapted, and he went through the door into the sound of his family beginning another ordinary day. She turned back to the harbor. The cargo vessel was small now, heading out. The fishing boat was coming in. She finished her tea in the early light and let the harbor do what it had always done: receive, release, continue, and felt, for the first time in a long time, like something that was not moving away from anything. *End NEXTPLASE subscribe.